So 13 years ago, I never anticipated that I would be where I am today, and with the belief system and thoughts and feelings and even what's going on politically. I never thought that I would see what I'm seeing today. Of course, how would I know? I'm not part of the power elite. I don't have the playbook. I'm just part of it like everybody else. I'm controlled opposition. But I'm not controlled opposition anymore because I don't take a side. You see, everybody out there right now who is not neutral, who is out there fighting some battle, I don't care what it is, and that could be also immunologically, you are controlled opposition. So it's not just Alex Jones that people accuse of being controlled opposition. It's everybody out there who's in a war, in resistance, in denial, in pleasure and paradise, over the fucking rainbow, just completely oblivious to how everything is going. They are controlled opposition. Even those in denial are not even neutral because they're resisting cancer, disease, chronic illness. They're resisting change. They're resisting everything. Even the denial. People in denial are resisting everything. So they're controlled opposition. When you finally walk away from all the wars, and that's in politics, religion, science, immunologically, biologically, when you finally walk away from the war, you're not a slave and you're not controlled opposition. So, wow, that's a major revelation, because I realized that no matter which side you take, you're going to be the fucking asshole. And I realized that through the Gaza situation, because yes, I was raised Jewish, so naturally I would take up for Israel, but then it made me an asshole. But then that's also what was the intention. So no matter which side you take, you will be the asshole and you will die in the war because you're in resistance, and then you will put yourself in a position to be harmed in some way, because not only will you take a side for or against Israel or Palestine, but then you'll also resist cancer, disease, and chronic illness. You'll also resist the changes in the community. You'll also be out there punching air. You'll be in religion, telling everyone to believe or not believe in something. You'll be in spirituality. I mean, so finally, when you walk away from society, when you think about it, because that's how you're going to save yourself. When you walk away from society and you take a neutral position, be a neutrophil, not that you're going to be just taking people down left and right, regardless of side, because that's what neutrophils are. They don't have discernment. You just take care of yourself and you let the system destroy those who mean to destroy themselves. And so it's pretty extraordinary what is going on today. It is so extraordinary. I actually feel privileged to be living during the times that I'm living in right now. And even though the whole Jilly Juice world was like, it wasn't planned. It was just an evolution that the system was prepared for. Because they knew at some point someone was going to discover something and start realizing certain things, and then there would be a certain resistance like there was. And at some point, even though I did take part in that war back in 2016, 2017 of opposition, controlled opposition, I had to evolve. But that meant looking at everything that I was in resistance to. And that's like peeling back the layers of programming and letting it go, and finally getting down to a platform that took no position and just realized that everything is out of my control. I have to either adapt to the changes or die in resistance. And I was not planning to die in resistance. I don't care for what. I was not going to die in resistance. I have to finally become neutral to save myself. And so I'll be an asshole to both sides. And they can all hate me, but it doesn't even matter anyways. No matter which side you take, someone's going to fucking hate you. So might as well have everybody hate you, and then you don't take part in all the controlled opposition, and you walk away, you stay home and stay safe. You play by the rules of your society. You let those who don't know any better fight it out, and they will destroy themselves through oncology, through remedies, through surgery, through going out there and protesting, volunteering to go to war, being out there in pleasure and paradise, trying to make a shit ton of money because they're capitalizing on the energy and anything else the system gives them, and then and you just watch it happen. You can't stop it, but once you recognize it and you're like, oh shit, then when you first discover how shit works, you can't wait to say it to everyone. But no matter how much you say it to people who are stuck in pleasure and paradise and greedy, it's not going to change them. They don't give a shit, or they're too far gone. One of the two. So they're going to capitalize on everything until they're so far gone, until they've collected so many friends, family, and baubles and riches and whatever else. Then, no, they get cancer and disease. But then by that time, it's too late. By that time, it's too late, because the environment is that aggressive that they can't get ahead of anything. And so all the riches and friends and family and baubles and big bank accounts will then go back to the system or the next of kin, who will then do themselves in. So it's like, no matter what, you can't be greedy if you want to survive in this society. But again, you can't tell people this because that's all they know. I've had the privilege to be exposed to the 1930s, 1920s, through relatives that I was adopted into, and then also see the future. That was the conspiracy world. That's when I first discovered the conspiracy world. Oh my God, when I first discovered Alex Jones. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm part of these groups, of course, way back in 2011 and 2012 for the most part. 2011, late 2011, when I started listening to YouTube, and I got a hold of some of the YouTube activists and discovered Alex Jones World, and I saw there was another storyline. Didn't matter if it was completely correct. I'm sure it was. Nothing you can do to stop it. I literally grieved for the future and the past. And I remember getting on Facebook and private messaging people and saying, I'm getting off of Facebook because this is all about, I was going off the deep end. Telling everybody through private message, the people that I had on my friends list, maybe 100 friends, maybe 200, I forget which. I'm saying, I'm getting off of Facebook because of this, and this. And of course, I'm still on Facebook, so obviously I didn't get off Facebook. But I was really, really devastated. I was grieving for the future, because I knew the future was done. As soon as I knew there was another storyline, and then I already knew that I had issues. I had PMDD. I had so many issues that I already saw the writing on the wall for myself and also for my fellow countrymen. And I just saw the writing on the wall for the future and everything. I was like, oh my God. Innately, I knew it was the end. It didn't have to be the end of me. I mean, that was the thing. It took 13 years to process this and finally save myself. But man, oh man. When you discover there's another storyline, that is a grieving. And then now, people have died in my world. I still grieve for them. I reacted in some ways. Some I didn't like the way people dealt with their grief and all that and how they looked at me and me discovering and pulling back the layers of shit. And, but I pretty much have, the truth passes through 3 stages. I'm at the 3rd part where it's accepted as self-evident. There's going to be inevitable death and destruction, and it's just going to be a matter of just watching the dominoes fall. And I've pretty much accepted that's what's going to happen for everybody in my world. If you happen to live, great. And we can celebrate life. But that's the thing, is that I don't celebrate anyone's death. If anything, I just kind of walk away from those that are actually literally in self-destruct. The only time that I'm going to help somebody out, literally, is when I'm in a contractual relationship with them. That's my husband. He's the only one that I'm going to actually help figure out how he can, if he chooses to go down that road of opposite of where I'm going, fine. I will help him through whatever process, and I will survive it. But that's it. I'm not going to be part of anyone else's death and fucking destruction. I'm not going to go and celebrate their death. I'm not going to go and take part in the takedown of themselves. No, I can't do that. That's against my morals and against my, no. So, yeah, so the whole thing with Schopenhauer's quote, the truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. Third, that's where I'm at, it's accepted as self-evident. And that's kind of a trippy place to be in. Like, literally, it's a trippy place to be in. because then everything is confirmation. But that's like anything, like confirmation bias. That's fine. But I'm not taking part in the war out there. I'm done with that. Okay, so I said the boomers raised some Gen X to radicalize Gen Z to be the zombie apocalypse. Boomers might be stuck in the 1960s, and you would think the Gen X millennials would find a way not to repeat history, but biology says offspring always repeat history, even in different ways. So it's no surprise many Gen X relate to boomers and millennials, radicalizing Gen Z into self-destruction used as a violent tool for change. And that's all of these protests over in these colleges. Okay? I mean, the students at these colleges are being used as a tool. They're using Prairie Fire, which is that like manifesto of Weather Underground back in the 1960s to radicalize people into change. And you saw what happened in the 1960s. I was watching Dan Rather, the documentary, because I remember he was taken down right at the beginning of the turn of the next turning, which was 9/11. As soon as 9/11 happened and whatever else, and then people were critical of George Bush. And he wanted to go after George Bush like he went after Nixon. The New World Order is like, nope, you're done. Yeah. And so it's no surprise many Gen X relate to boomers and millennials, radicalizing Gen Z to self-destruction, used as a violent tool for change. So yes, history is repeating. And watching Dan Rather, like his documentary, I used to watch him as a kid when my parents would watch the news. So it would be like 6 o'clock at night, be at the table, and we'd had all the 70s, 80s decor. I'm remembering the carpet and all that stuff, and I'm sitting at the table. It's a brown round table, and the TVs over here are not allowed to watch TV because some of it was violent. And I'm hearing, oh, this is Dan Rather, CBS News, no. And I'm like, oh, wow, Dan Rather. And so watching him throughout the decades as a child, he was always in my living room reporting the news. But I didn't know his history. I only knew from the 80s. Okay, from what I remember of just watching the news as a kid from the 80s. But he has a whole history behind him that I finally, just like O.J. Simpson, I only saw what happened in the 90s, but he had a whole history behind him. So now I was learning the other side of the story of people back in the 80s that I grew up with that were luminaries of their time, and then watching the takedown of them in the 90s and in the 2000s. It's such a trip watching that side of it. So I'm just like, oh my God. So watching that last night, like, oh, so that's Dan Rather's background. And he did report on the Vietnam War. He was part of all the different turnings as far as the war. And even back when he was raised in 1941 in Texas, he had some kind of rheumatoid disease that caused him to be in bed for a long time. And then he went and joined the military, did some stuff, joined the military, and then was kicked out because he had an issue. Then he went to journalism. The pen is mightier than the sword, right? So, yeah, his background was so interesting. I was like, oh my gosh. I love learning about different people and their backgrounds, especially those who have been major influencers in my parents' time as well as mine. Then I can see then patterns develop. So whenever so many generations reproduce so heavily on bodies in political, nutritional, and intellectual deficit, they become cavemen and lose their ability to think in forward-thinking ways, and they become reactive tinderboxes just waiting to be triggered. Okay, so, people can take umbrance to this statement. How can you say that they are in political, nutritional, and intellectual deficit? Well, because they're being radicalized by somebody. It's not like they just thought of I'm going to go and resist the system. No, someone told them to resist the system. These students are being agitated by their professors who were raised back in the 19-whatever. They were boomers and Gen X. A lot of these are Gen X and boomers, yes, because you have the faculty, that you have the elders that are boomers. And then you have the next generation, which is Gen X. They're like, oh, I'm going to go radicalize Gen Z because the my boomer parents were radicalized in the 1960s. So we're going to repeat history. Oh, we're against Israel. We're against the war in Gaza. We're going to go and fight, oh my God. Yeah, just even watching that 2-second soundbite through NBC and seeing that this professor, like, oh yeah, he was part of the encampments that were being taken down by the police in UCLA. I'm like, oh, I see now what's going on. But even in the independent movement, you had all these different professors, like at Fordham University, radicalized people in the independent movement back in the 2000s. That's when I was part of the independent movement, and I left that because I knew there wasn't any kind of change. They were no different than what they were back in the 1960s. And the leader of the independent movement was another SDS member. Students of a Democratic Society. Was it social psychology or social whatever it was? I forget exactly. But I left the independent movement because it was just another radicalization. Now I understand why it exists. But I knew that wasn't where I wanted to go. I didn't want to take another fucking side, take another political party. That wasn't the model that I believed in. And I knew innately that wasn't where I was going. So that whole situation ended. And so I left San Francisco, left California. I'm done with the wars. That's the wars in California are becoming just too much. I won't fucking survive it. So I left the war in California. So yeah, political cavemen. They become cavemen and lose their ability to think in forward-thinking ways, and they become reactive tinder boxes just waiting to be triggered. The system knew this, and I figured out the last 7 years, and some of you can see it if you're not capitalizing on the weaknesses of your peers. If you are capitalizing on the weaknesses of your peers, you will resist all info such as this. And you'll say, Jillian is stupid. Yes, the pen is mightier than the sword because you cannot save or defend anyone 10,000 miles away or even in another home or culture or state. If you choose to defend people who cannot be defended unless you go and physically defend them on their turf, then you become the offensive and violent tool for those who agitated you into destruction. Now look at your Facebook and those who take a side, who hate Israel, who hate Palestine, who hate this and that, whatever. The war is on all fronts. It is the remedies, the oncology, food mitigation, the herbs, voluntary surgeries, extracts, essential oils, constant animal reproduction, and animal trade. And it is watching people die overseas, causing so much trauma and hate, people feel compelled to lash out because they feel helpless. I used to take a side until I realized the system had purposely gaslit people into violent destruction reactions that are deadly to those in their line of sight or to themselves. I walked away to save myself. I realized 13 years ago what was to come, and I grieved for everyone, and it took me 13 years to process what I see today. So when people start dying, and you see them decline, and they're getting this and that, and you're like, you know what's the inevitable? There's no more thoughts and prayers. There's no way. There's no more tears left to cry. This is what to expect. This is the J world. When you realize that's what the intention was, and you're watching people's intentions accelerate. You're watching their belief systems accelerate. This is when you go through the process and you finally become stoic. I mean, yeah, you'll have your own emotions like I did the last couple of days with my own pain and saying what I had to say and looking at society and having a say about it. But you won't have any tears left to cry, really. You'll just have to go through what you've already planned for was the inevitable. Someone's going to die. You're going to be left alone, or you'll just won't have your friends around you anymore, or your sons or daughters, because they'll die suddenly. They're not going to change. They don't have the capacity to. They're caught in pleasure and paradise, or caught in the addictions, caught in all the habits that they can't just stay home and stay safe. Because they feel that they have what is called FOMO, the fear of missing out. I'm 50 years old. I've done so much. There are people that are like 20 years younger than me who's like, oh, I got to go and travel and do this and travel and do that and da-da-da. I got to get all the experiences that Gen X and boomers had in order to be like them. But they don't realize that the world's changing. And so they do the same thing that we did and what my parents did and even what boomers did. My parents were silent gens. Even what boomers did, and they're going to destroy themselves. But you can't tell them anything because they have what you call fear of missing out. I am neutral because no matter which side I take in any war, I will become the asshole. And since I'm already the asshole for being neutral, I might actually survive being the asshole to both sides, not just one side. Okay, so yes, you should watch that Dan Rather documentary on Netflix. Seriously, watch it. It's pretty informative, because the birth of the investigative journalism and the death of investigating the wrong people or the right people. Even though Dan Rather was correct that Bush had a troubled military record in the National Guard, the evidence that Dan Rather produced was not verified, and therefore he was discredited. It was a forged document. Even though the information was correct, the evidence he produced was not. And that's how the system got him. That's the technicalities that you have to be aware of. The Bush administration ended his career even though he was correct. He couldn't prove it, and they covered it up, and Dan Rather was ended. You could be exactly right. You could be so right, but it doesn't make a difference when the system has an intention. Remember that before you chase being right. Sometimes it's not worth it. Have the discernment to know when to back off or provide the other argument to give balance to the issue. And Dan Rather was rather biased. Even though he says he's bipartisan, he was rather biased. He was more liberal than not. He was trying to expose all the inequities that was going on during the Vietnam War, and all this stuff was going on. And he went after Nixon and all this stuff, and then he thought he can go after George Bush. Just like those who are right-wing 9/11 truthers. That's the irony of it all. The 9/11 truthers have become the new liberals. The ones that are all like, oh, we're against Israel. We're against all that. We got to save the Palestinians. And then Biden, who is a Democrat, who they hate, fine, we'll bring the Palestinians over here. So then you have the right wing who are against immigration, who are against Israel and for the Palestinians. Fine, we'll bring them all over here. That's the whole irony of it all. That's what I am actually impressed with, is how shit can turn and how shit can turn around and turn on people that fast. That then the students and then all the right-wing people who are against Israel and for Palestine will have to eat their words and take care of the people that they are taken up for. But they're not going to do that. They're going to be silent and then just be like, oh God, Israel's so stupid. Yeah, you've been had. Because you took a side. You didn't understand both sides of the issue. And so the takedown of traditional colleges. The written word is self-expression, not protest. So these kids in that video are like, oh, we're self-expressing. We're gonna fight the power. We're not gonna stop. I'm like, oh my God. These professors agitating these poor children who don't know any better. Even the professors are not very intelligent around this situation, because they were radicalized by people who radicalized them. This is not the Vietnam War. But this was meant to happen. The old world is going away. The expendable youth will be used as a tool. They'll be baby mamas and then destroy themselves through their family and all the operations and oncology and everything else. Or they'll be radicalized in the universities by academia. And they are told they are the change agents for social change. And they'll be used as a tool. And someone will die in the process because they think this is the 1960s. Many will die suddenly from issues, as you're seeing. And some will die in the crossfire. So you have the Midwest, people who aren't going to college, they'll be baby mamas, the hot chicks in these small towns, that they are like a big fish in a small pond, right? They're hot chicks. Everyone loves them. Everyone thinks they're hot. So they go and have a bunch of children. And then they die suddenly because they have like 3 or 4 kids. And then now in their 30s, they die suddenly. Or they'll be going to college and they get radicalized by their professors. And then they go and demonstrate and they get caught in the crossfire and be like a Kent State. That's pretty much the future for 25-year-olds. Or they have their children. Of course, they die in the process having those kids at some point. The kids will go to school, and then even their kids might have an issue with surviving. Which is the same thing. Hot chicks having kids die suddenly. Yeah. So they think this is Prairie Fire. And their leaders are using the same playbook, but the students don't even know any better. That's why I bought Prairie Fire, because I knew that was the playbook. They're taking away their own future because they don't know how to do anything except follow somebody else. They're not self-motivated. They don't have enough time to be. They're being used as violent weapons. When you sit at home and you read the internet and you read every single fucking argument and you read every single academic concept and definition, that's self-motivation to understand certain things and then develop your own argument around it. But when you're out there in college, having someone tell you how to think, what to think, well, that's how the system is changing. You see, I was lucky enough not to go to college and be radicalized. I think my mother was actually ahead of her time, or I don't know. I speculate, but I don't think everything was completely known. But anyways, I was lucky enough not to be pigeonholed in a college system. But I was taught to do book reports. I was taught to just sit in my room and read the dictionary, read whatever was available. I was taught to be free, but with freedom comes responsibility and learning the hard lessons if you survive freedom. Luckily, I did. And so now, in this time of upheaval where the traditional colleges and ways of learning are going to the wayside because kids are dying suddenly, kids are being radicalized and used as tools for social change, I could sit at home because I've done all my traveling. I've been to China right after it, basically the Cultural Revolution, because that Dan Rather was there during that Tiananmen Square issue in 1989. And then after that, China opened its doors, and then so that was like 1990 something, opened its doors, and then in 2003, 2004, I went there right as soon as, So I got to see, even right after China spun into the technology industry and wanted to open its doors and be capitalistic. So I've done, yes, a lot. I've seen a lot the last 50 years. So I could sit at home. I don't need to be out there, proving to everyone that I'm a well-rounded person, seeing everything. I've been to the oldest European country called Portugal, through the conspiracy world, through the guru world. Okay? But at this point, those who try to do what I'm doing and haven't figured out how to cultivate their brain without having to be out there, well, if you can do what I'm doing, great. But most people that are like younger than me will have to be out there because, again, fear of missing out. But if you can cultivate your brain without being out there, you might have a chance. But not many many kids now in college are not very self-motivated. They're going to go and regurgitate. And so they're not self-motivated. They don't have enough time to be. They're being used as violent weapons. And guess what? They can hang out with the Palestinian refugees in New York City, LA, and all the major cities with universities who are all about social change. They can help them become American. They can all work together, assuming they survived the war on both sides. The pen is mightier than the sword is an expression that means the written word is more effective than violence for social or political change. The phrase was first used by English author Edward Bulwer Lytton in 1839 in his play Richelieu, or The Conspiracy. In the play, the character Cardinal Richelieu, chief minister to King Louis the 13th, I think, understands the, or 23, God, I have to remember how to figure out how to read those Roman numerals. Oh my God, it's basic shit. It could be 23 or 13. I forget what X, I think X is 10, or is it 20? Understand the power of, I think it's 13. Yeah, understand the power of the written words to influence, persuade, and change the course of history. So in the play, the character of Cardinal Richelieu, the chief minister to King Louis the 13th, understands the power of the written word to influence, persuade, and change the course of history. So me doing what I was doing on the internet, speaking, writing, even though it was all like word salad, as people would say, well, that was a development process. Everything has to go through a transition of development. And look, we have potential biological immortality. Dan Rather was the example of the pen in journalism is mightier than the sword until he was taken down by the Republicans and the Bush administration. If you're going to be an investigative reporter or journalist on any level, remember, there's always a wrong person you're exposing, okay? George Bush Jr. was not someone he should be trifled with back then. And so Dan didn't realize what he was doing. He didn't realize the fire he was playing with because he was just doing what he knew how to do. was be a hard-charging reporter that would question even Nixon. If you watch that, and then times changed. And then the system turned on him. Dan got fucked, literally. The end of Dan Rather and CBS News was the end of investigative journalism, like true investigative journalism. Now we get a bunch of cavemen fighting it out, and we get even more biases. All right? And so that was pretty wow. And so, yeah, Stephen Hawking, intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. Well, yeah. What? If you want to learn shit, study the 17 equations that changed the world by Ian Stewart. Pythagorean theorem, logarithms, calculus, law of gravity, the square root of -1. What is it? Euler's formula for polyhedra, normal distribution, wave equation, Fourier transform, Navier-Stokes equation, Maxwell's equation, second law of thermodynamics, relativity, Schrodinger's equation, information theory, chaos theory, Black-Scholes equation. Some I've researched, others I'm like, I don't even know where the hell that is. And that's okay. Learn it. Why not, right? Nothing else to do, right? And so, yeah, I was also just Googling what neutrophils were. Neutrophils are not NK or natural killer T cells, but they are essential for NK cells maturation and function. Neutrophils, all right? These are like the neutral ones, right? These innate, so it's part of the innate immune system. There's two of them. There's the adaptive and the innate. I learned that a few years ago. These innate cells are the most common circulating leukocytes, making up 50 to 70% red blood cells. They are phagocytes that infiltrate inflamed sites and kill microbes through phagocytosis, cytotoxicity, and secretion of antimicrobial compounds. Neutrophils, they neutralize things, okay? Neutrophils can also contribute to tumor growth and metastasis formation by stimulating angiogenesis. These are the little demons that people don't release because they're corked up. All right? So when someone has tumor or cancer, that's the body in defense. And so they also can contribute to tumor growth. So when you have tumors and cancer and disease, that's a body in defense, and it's going to take over and destroy. These are the little demons that people don't release because they're corked up. NK cells, these innate immune lymphocytes, are large granular cells that recognize and eliminate virus-infected and malignant transformed cells. They can produce cytokines and directly kill target cells. Natural killer T cells can also play a dual role related to angiogenesis by acting as both an inhibitor and promoter for this process. So, yeah, that's the thing about serial killers and kids that kill and all that stuff. They are so full of defense system. They're out there in destruct mode because they're corked up. They're on marijuana, which takes down their immune system and allows the enemy to proliferate and also cause dementia. Or they're taking lymphocyte promoters like herbs and extracts, causing then the defense system to proliferate and become so influential that they act upon whatever they're programmed within their politics and religion as well as science. And so, yeah, people are actually weaponized against the population. And then you have to get out of the mainstream, get out of the public foray, and stay home and stay safe because people are radicalized and they're weaponized against their peers. And you can see what they say on Facebook. And you can't change them. They're too radicalized. They're too far gone. A neutrophil infection is also called neutrophilia. Occurs when the body has too many neutrophils in the bloodstream. Neutrophils are part of the white blood cells that help the body fight infection. They neutralize things. When the body detects the infection, immature neutrophils leave the bone marrow. That's a lot of these beta cells, right? B cells. Too quickly to enter the bloodstream, which can lead to neutrophilia. A high neutrophil count is usually caused by bacterial infection, but can also be caused by viral, fungal, parasitic infections or inflammation. So B lymphocytes and neutrophils, they're not the same thing, but B lymphocytes are a type of lymphocyte and neutrophils are a type of granular lymphocyte. So B lymphocytes are from the adaptive, and neutrophils are from the innate. Okay? And so they are different with different, types of things, but The blood clots and all the heart attacks and strokes are the fact that the lymphocytes and the neutrophils become so numerous they have nowhere to go because they're not being released, and people die from sudden death. And so, yeah, what somebody said in a Die Suddenly group, I work with the elderly and disabled. I've noticed many have seizures now after taking the you-know-what. I have to get medical history on them, most of them, and so heartbreaking. Yeah. Because what happens when you have immune system activation is then you develop so much defense that people can't get ahead of it. They're overprotected. And that's what happens. Protection is not really what people think it is. So here I go. I'm taking devil's advocate because I'm just like, fuck it. I don't care. It's done. America is done. People don't realize that. And so you're going to see those that hate Israel, that have no problem saying they hate Israel, take up for Palestinians. Palestine wants to be free. Palestine wants a peaceful area. The system, what is it called? Problem, reaction, solution. Develop a problem. People get a reaction. Here's the solution. Come to America. So America doesn't open up its borders because of all the downtrodden people that people are like, oh gosh, we don't like Israel. So okay, we're going to save the Palestinians. Fine. Those who hate Israel and pick up for Palestinians, fine. Palestine's coming here. Gaza is coming here. This is what you wanted, right? That's what you're going to get. So I'm going to say, fine, I'll join in. Free Palestine. Open the American borders. Let them all in. If that's what many people want, I will let my American government grant their wish. I refuse to take a side, even though I did defend Israel in the beginning. I understand the situation, even though it might have been contrived to force me to make this type of choice, because you can't stop Israel from doing what it needs to do to save themselves, regardless of what that means, okay, if it's appropriate. People think it's all contrived, whatever. At the end of the day, Palestinians need a homeland and Israel is stronger, and they could annihilate Palestine just like that. What is a better place than America, right? There's no place like America or the UK or Australia or Canada, right? And Palestinians are tired of dodging bullets just like Israelis. America has friendlier bullets over here and a lot more space to dodge them. So you get your wish. Those who want to free the Palestinians from occupation, we will share our food with them. And then I don't look like the asshole. Because yeah, when you take a side, you're forced to become the asshole if you don't pick the right side according to somebody else's perspective. And so if I chose Israel, then people would say I'm a child killer. If I chose Palestine, they would call me anti-Semitic. Welcome to America then. Come on, fine, come over here. I don't care. Welcome to Australia. Welcome to the United Kingdom. Welcome to Canada. The irony is we have a lot of right-wing people who are against immigration, but we are granting your wish. We will save Palestinians. That's what you wanted. That's probably what you're going to get. And I have no control over that. I'm an American. I will honor what my fellow countrymen desire. If the government supports it, I'm fine with it. The next civil war is when those who have been critical of foreign affairs have to deal with the ramifications of their wishes and choices. Okay, what do you mean by that? Well, let's just say the system decides to develop something like a situation that then some culture that came here will be blamed for. So even while Palestinians and immigrants from South America come to America, and then they're here, and then something happens, and then the system wants to blame then this person that came from overseas. And then those who were opposing those wishes and choices of those who wanted to save Palestine and save the immigrants will be mad at those who wanted to save the world. I mean, that's why I just get out of the war, and I just save myself, because there's no way around it. The Democrats will turn Republican, and the Republicans will turn Democrat, and then both will look exactly the same. At some point, they'll either destroy each other or save each other to death. There really is no difference. In the meantime, during my neutrality, I have no issue with immigration. At this point, the system can develop digital money out of thin air and give people what they need to survive without the extras, unless you earn those extras. Those who figured out how to make money in our society will live based upon what they choose to do and how many hours they choose to work and what kind of lifestyle they want to uphold. It's really none of my business how others make their money or where they get it from. I will let law enforcement and the government handle that side of the world. My job is to be a pleasant citizen and to abide by the law. If I choose to break the law, I'd better have a lot of money and deep pockets to buy my way out of punishment. And that was O.J. Simpson. I don't know if Trump will have deep enough pockets to get out of whatever the situations he's in. So we'll see what happens. But he has deep pockets just like OJ. But will he get off, or will they throw the book at him? Oh, we'll see. So somebody, you know, it's really awesome to have so many different friends on my Facebook. And the thing is that I may disagree with some of the people, friends on my Facebook, but we don't confront each other. Okay? So I still respect them for their views around Israel. I still respect them for their views around stuff. I get it. I can't change them. They have their own stuff to deal with. But I still respect, I want to see what people think. You know, I want to hear what they think. And then I'm not trying to change their mind, but I'm also giving the other side of it, the balance. So this person said, who is against Israel? Do not associate with the neutrals. Someone like me, right? Because they will betray you someday because they're too cowardly to take a stand. Well, I can understand that because I remember when I was anti-V and then I became pro-V and then I realized I can't be any of those. So I left, right? And so no matter what, I mean, someone is gonna, whoever it is that I joined, when I leave that group, leave that cult, they're going to say, I'm disloyal. I'm a coward. I didn't take a stand. I remember, hey, if you don't take a stand for something, you'll fall for everything. There's that. I'm like, oh God. I'll tell you, all these different quotes were made for a reason, and they sound good at the time, but sometimes it's not worth it. It just depends on how the system wants you to react. And so I said, please associate with the neutrals because they won't betray you someday because they take a stand for people to be strong and save themselves so they never have to depend on someone else to save them. And so if those in Palestine have to suffer, just like I had to suffer, just like so many people had to suffer, and then finally those strong ones survive that and they become strong and awesome and whatever else, well, just like those who are dying in the medical system, in the holistic system, they were weak. Well, just like over in different places that are in wars, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, whatever, the weak die. It fucking sucks. Believe me, I don't like what's going on. I hate watching my friends and family take drugs and alcohol and party and destroy themselves. But that's no different than going to war with somebody and the weak get annihilated. What do you think happens in the medical system? What do you think happens in the holistic system? What do you think happens in the activist system? And those are like, oh God, the chemtrails. Well, you can't stop them. You can't stop geoengineering. You can't stop climate change. And so what are they doing? They're taking their surgeries, taking their remedies. They're saying all food is poison. They're annihilating themselves while others in other countries are being annihilated because they're weak, because they haven't figured out how to save themselves or leave or whatever. They stood their ground. Okay, when you stand your ground and you don't really have enough ground to stand on or you're not strong enough to defend yourself against a huge army, you're going to be annihilated just like that guy in Tiananmen Square back in '89 when he went up against that tank. I don't know what happened. I don't want to know. Did he get run over? I don't know. But that's the thing. Sometimes it's better to leave a war than stand your ground. Sometimes it's better to walk away. But if you're backed into a corner, fine, I get it. Neutrality is revolutionary in the age of war. People want you to take a side and take a stand with them so they can develop a gang and bully other people and then do exactly what they were against to begin with. Beat people into submission. If you care about other people, care about yourself and become strong and show people what it means to be strong by not beating somebody else into submission or taking away their pain and suffering or taking food away from them, including your children. You always defend yourself. And when push comes to shove, those who take a side can't handle their own position because they don't even know what they're asking of people and themselves. They want to save all the animals in the universe, but they can't afford to. They don't have the means to do that. But they're all about saving the world, but they don't have the infrastructure to do that. So they just pay lip service. Or they spend your money. They dangle pictures of poor animals in desperate situations, playing to your emotions, playing up to your emotions. So you feel sorry for these animals. Then not only you give money, but you adopt them all, and then you go broke into the process. Instead of coming down on those who breed animals for profit, those who are extremely emotional will spend everyone's money out there and their emotions. And their emotions. And then when they're done for the day, making the system so much money and saddling people with animals they have no intention to really keep alive except butcher in the veterinary system, they go home to their pleasure in paradise until they feel the need to play the game of donating to causes through nasty, aggressive energy. So yeah, people who dangle desperate situations in front of people, they're playing to their emotions. They're gaslighting people purposely. And those are all the bleeding heart liberals that are also in the Republican Party. They're being shown images that make them all whatever, and then they go and pass those images on. They become what they are against. And so, no, the bleeding heart Republicans out there in middle America, they don't want to save all the animals from everything, but they don't stop the breeding. Oh, but they butcher them through all the laparoscopic surgery of controlling their birth rate. At this point, it's done. It's just done. And so, according to the September 2023 study, shorter telomeres on white blood cells, leukocytes, may increase the risk of dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so participants with shorter leukocytes telomere was 14% more likely to be diagnosed with dementia and 28% more to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease than those with longer telomeres. Okay, so what are the contributing factors to shorter telomeres? Thermodynamics. They're not eating enough. They're taking so many remedies. They're causing so much competition. Polymerases don't fully replicate the ends of linear DNA molecules during cell division. DNA processing. DNA is processed at the end of linear chromosomes. Cell division rate, telomeres shorten with each cell division because they're doing it so fastly and they can't keep up because people are starving. And so telomere is an enzyme that replenishes the telomeric DNA, but if the cells don't have enough, telomere will shorten with each division. Lifestyle factors like smoking, obesity, stress, lack of frequency-inducing physical activity, and of course starvation, but they don't say that. So what does that mean? People don't know what the fuck that means. And so, yeah. And so lymphocytes and leukocytes, yeah. When you have cannabis taken away, the lymphocytes, part of the leukocytes, right? And then you have some of the herbs that develop so much that people become so overridden they can't handle the immune system activation. Yeah, their body's at war and then they take themselves down. Yeah, it's done. And so climate change is when the wars you protested out there are coming home. The system is bringing the war home to you in your immune system called climate change in your backyard, all with your permission. And here we go. I got to read this. This is about the vaccine. Renowned scientists, all COVID vax will DIE in 3 to 5 years. All right, so I'm just going to read this. Worth a read, especially during climate change. People who trust vaccines regardless if they can survive them, getting them, not getting them, they have a specific lifestyle and belief system. Those who don't get vax will play the odds relative to the arguments presented to the vaccines, for the vaccines. Some who do not believe in vaccines are strong enough for the environment and they really don't need a vaccination, or they turn to holistic remedies, and that has its own fallout. Some people who get vaccinations also turn to holistic remedies, which is a double, triple whammy against their immune system. But this is about those who actually trust vaccines. People who trust vaccines have a very specific lifestyle and belief system. There is a psychology behind those who get therapies and vaccines. The psychology behind it is that if they get a vaccine, they don't have to change the way they do things. They depend upon somebody else to protect them from themselves and from their community. They don't understand their own immune system, and so they think getting an injection is going to give them all the protection in the world. Even though the science makes sense from a specific perspective, it doesn't mean that you're actually protected when you get a vaccine. Because what does that really mean? There's such thing as overprotection. Because even though I understand certain blood types don't have the antibodies, how do you know a person can process, develop, manage, and release excessive antibodies during aggressive climate change? You can protect someone so much that you destroy them because they don't have the conditioning to handle stress and hardship and food. They're always looking for a way out, the easy way out. And simply activating your immune system is only one half of the equation. People can't handle immune system activation, and so activating an immune system voluntarily doesn't actually protect them. As you can see, the side effects are written on the insert. And you'll never know if immune system activation was from the vaccine, which gave you the antigen, or did the trauma of injection wake up the beast within. You'll never know if it was the chicken or the egg, especially mRNA, messenger RNA. Once your immune system is activated, how do you manage a life that's been activated? If you must get a vaccine, you absolutely have no idea how to manage a life within during immune system activation. It's like what we did in the J world. We activate our immune system with the salt and the water, and then use holistic remedies to stop the life from activating. If you can't handle immune system activation, the vaccines will do nothing for you except accelerate potential future cancer and die suddenly because of your lifestyle and belief system. You still have the power to redirect. But most likely those who trust vaccines refuse to change anything about their lifestyle or belief system. They won't even redirect to save their own life. Dispelling some of the arguments against the vaccines used by the activists. This is more than just saying you have an immune system to those who are anti-vaccine. Do you even know how to manage your own immune system to work for you so you don't die someday? People who are 90 and 20 have an immune system. So simply saying you have an immune system is not good enough argument against the vaccinations. You might have an immune system, but you don't understand how to manage it to your benefit. And that goes for both the anti-vaccine world and the pro-vaccine world. If you can't handle immune system activation and you can't characterize pain and suffering correctly and support it with all the food, it won't matter what you do. And so this makes sense why those who got vaccinations most likely will die or be diagnosed with something 3 to 5 years from the point of the first vaccination. Your immune system was activated and climate change kept the growth accelerating exponentially. You couldn't handle life before climate change, which is why you believe in vaccines. Inevitably, you will not be able to handle life during climate change, and it will destroy you unless you actually change the way you view everything you thought you knew. That includes all activists against the vaccinations turning to holistic remedies and detoxes. There is nothing like learning valuable information at the 11th hour. Many won't survive this information anyway, so it doesn't matter. And so if your family has disowned you because you're not indoctrinated sheep, well then you're free. Don't join another culture. Fix your own, represent. You're not looking for followers. So when people trade one religion for another, they also trade one addiction for another. If you have been set free, don't enslave yourself again. So someone said, oh, if your family has disowned you because you're not indoctrinated sheep, well then join mine and you're part of my tribe. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Weather underground stuff. 2019 COVID, 2020 BLM youth. 2020 BLM youth and destruction of cities. 2021 January 7 right-wing destruction of Capitol. 2024 highfalutin universities under attack of the students. Generation Zombie, Youth on Revolt, and Destruction all had to be gaslit and radicalized to develop change. And so I already grieved the loss of you 13 years ago once I discovered another storyline. If you stay alive, great. We can celebrate life together alive, but I already grieved. It's now just a matter of time. 13 years ago, I cried my eyes out. 13 years ago, I was devastated. 13 years ago, I knew what the future entailed. 13 years ago, I knew how bad it was going to be. I had to process what is going on today 13 years ago. I got married 13 years ago, and it was great. I entered into the conspiracy world 13 years ago. 8 years ago, I changed my life. Gelatinous men lack salt, protein, meat, milk, and cheese, and eggs, falling apart. Not enough salt to salt in, and the environment salts them out. Salting in. The effects of salt, such as sodium chloride, can increase the solubility of protein, is often referred to salting in. That's also called negentropy. Okay? And so salting out is entropy, when you break up things. Okay, so salting out is known as salt-induced precipitation, salt fractionation, anti-solvent crystallization, like purifying. Precipitation, crystallization of drowning out in a purification technique that utilizes the reduced solubility of certain molecules in a solution of very high ionic strength, just like the environment. Right now, those on low sodium diets and diets in general are being salted out by the ionic environment called climate change, and they are gelatinous and aging. Those on high sodium diets are not releasing the way they need to and are overabundant and salting in, and the environment is also accelerating the obesity process. Obese men are using the salts in their diets to cure them into obesity and excessive growth, and the ionic environment is also accelerating those intentions, which is why it's hard to lose weight unless you torture yourself in the gym or die suddenly or get operations. Skinny women are being salted out by climate change. I fluctuate in this world because I don't resist what's going on. I've changed my ways of doing things. I've paid my dues. And so I don't celebrate the destruction of the human genome by saying all older women should get together and praise God they get pleasure and privilege of aging. I don't celebrate anyone's destruction. How do I celebrate life? I respect my own life. I celebrate my own life when I'm alive. As far as getting closure for the death and destruction of my world, I grieve the loss of the old world as soon as I discovered another storyline 13 years ago. I pretty much managed the closure of death and destruction. I already grieved the loss of the old world, and that includes many people in it. If you stay alive, good for you. Celebrate your life. If you die suddenly or declining, I've already grieved your loss a long time ago. I already saw the indicators. It's just a matter of time. I still honor you and respect you. I've already had closure. It's surviving the loss of the old world is what I'm in the process of. But I already grieve for the future losses. So salting out is entropy, salting in is negentropy, balance, that's why I salt my food. And tooth decay. And tooth decay is not from too much sugar, it's lack of salt, release, and retention. The system programmed people to demonize food, so they voluntarily starve themselves out of the system. No one is doing anything to people who will purposely withhold food from themselves and families. It is quite genius. World War II will never happen again. No one will do anything that you have not already done to yourself and the kids and kids, or given permission to the system mercenaries who will protect the system from you. And so, shit. Okay, there's 2 more. Okay. All right, there's 3 more. I'm almost done. I'm going to get through this really quickly because I got things to do. I got people coming to take care of something. Okay. It's hot. Again, if you are against the war in Gaza and hate Israel, I hope you are requesting the American government to develop American hosting programs so you can host your Palestinian friends. Okay, I already said this. I'm not going to go through this again. The Hayflick limit is when the immortalized germline cells made up of a percentage of mortal somatic cells have exhausted their limit of redoubling itself 50 times over. And the next viral immortalized germline cell called cancer steps in and appoints another cabinet of white blood cells to redouble itself 50 times over. But the life is not organized, you get chaos and death. Leukocytes, too many white blood cells cause disease on starving bodies who think their air, food, and water is poison. Okay, so white blood cell leukocytes constitute the majority of somatic cells in question. If you can't release the demons on your own and you starve yourself and you can't adapt and assimilate to your environment and the new life in the world, you'll protect the system by destroying yourself through starvation and intolerance. You believe people should die someday and you're intolerant of the air, food, and water. The system is protecting itself from you because you will take care of yourself out your own hand. That's why it's a little comical watching people try to save each other through the system when they have already proven intolerance to assimilation, buying all the protection in the world, and they're under the influence. The fact you have access to this knowledge and protection means the system wants you to use that knowledge and protection to do yourself in. And then, all right, the supplement salesmen and people who sell you protection, diet, surgeries, and are actually protecting themselves from you by taking you down notch by notch. It was never about protecting you. It was about protecting themselves from you by selling you death and the tools, and they are tools of the system. Protection is actually the system protecting itself from you. And you get paid very well protecting the system by taking people down as humanely as possible. When you can get people to voluntarily starve themselves because you told them all food was poisoned by Monsanto, you are protecting the system from people you claim to protect. You are used as a tool, which is why I walk away from all the activists out there, because you actually are starving people through the psychological operations the system gave to you to use to make you think you're a savior. Anyone selling you protection from the air, food, and water is making money off your own destruction. If you have to be protected from the environment, you won't survive climate change or adaptation. It won't matter what you do. Enjoy the ride out the door. And then, here's a connection between starvation and disease. People who are starving are also full of disease and intolerant and violent. The Irish potato famine, also known as the Great Hunger, lasted from 1845 to 1852 and caused starvation, disease, and emigration. And there you go. Bye.